Music, as an art form, is essentially playful. We say you play the piano. You don't work the piano. Why? Music differs from, say, travel. When you travel, you are trying to get somewhere. In music, though, one doesn't make the end of a composition the point of the composition. If that were so, the people go to a concert just to hear one crashing chord, because that's the end. Same way in dancing. You don't aim at a particular spot in the room. That's where you should arrive. The whole point of the dancing is the dance. Look at the people who live to retire and put those savings away. And then when they're 65, they don't have any energy left, they're more or less impotent, and they go and rot in an old people's senior citizens community. Because we've simply cheated ourselves the whole way down the line. We thought of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end, and the thing was to get to that end, success or whatever it is, or maybe heaven after you're dead. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played.
And so the only thing anybody can agree about today is that we ought to survive. But when you say to yourself, you must go on living, you put yourself in a double bind. Because you said to a process which is essentially spontaneous that it must happen. And the basic form of the double bind, which is imposed upon all children, is you are required to do that which will be acceptable only if you do it voluntarily. So when we say to ourselves, you must go on, the reason is that we are not living in the eternal now, where reality is. We are always thinking that the satisfaction of life will be coming later. There's a good time coming, be it ever so far away, that one far-off divine event to which all creation moves. Don't kid yourself. Only suckers put hope in the future. Tatvamasi. You're it. The basic ta. Because ta doesn't mean anything. Ta is like everything else. See, the world is a musical phenomenon. Good music never refers to anything except the music itself. You don't ask Mr. Bach, Mr. Ravi Shankar, what do you mean by this music? What is it intended to express? Bad music always expresses something other than itself, like the 1812 overture. If you ask Bach, what is your meaning? You say, listen. That's the meaning. Giraffes are giraffing, trees are treeing, stars are starring, clouds are clouding. rain is raining, and people are people. And if you don't understand, look at it again. Wow. When you become again as a child and simply forget all that you ever were told and contemplate what is, all these ghosts go away. That's weird. But they just go. And then you enter into the eternal state. Well, there's no problem. Well, then you go back and you collect your opinions again. You think, well, that won't do. How can I be practical and be in that sort of state? Well, I remember in the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus said a lot of things about this. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet Suleiman in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. And if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, faithless ones? So, do not worry about tomorrow, saying, what shall we eat, what shall we drink, or how shall we clothe ourselves? Oh, the rabble seeks after these things. Sufficient to the day is the worry of it. Nobody ever preaches a sermon on that text. Never. I've heard lots of sermons, and never one on that one, because people say, look, that's all very well, because Jesus was the boss's son. And he knew, you see, that he was really in charge of the universe, and he'd nothing to worry about. But we have to be practical. Oh? What do you suppose the gospel was? The good news. Do you know it never got out? So, therefore, this hope for the future is a hoax. It's a perfect hoax. Maybe We will make spiritual progress. Everybody puts it off. Maybe if I work at yoga for 10 years, 20 years, and do this thing, I will eventually make it to moksha, to nirvana, whatever. That's nothing more than a postponement. It's this business of, because you're not fully alive now, you think maybe someday you will be. Confucius very wisely said, a man who understands the Tao in the morning may die with content in the evening. Because when you understand, you don't put your hope in time. Time won't solve a thing.
When we say that something is without purpose, that's a put-down phrase. Say, well, it's no future in it. What's the use? No, we say, what's the use? And we need very much to realize that that question reflects our insanity. What's the future? What's the use? The joy is that things have no use, and the future is not important. And Zhuangzi, for example, he has a great deal to say about the value of the useless life. The whole notion of something, of life, any moment in life or any event in life being useful, that is to say, serving the end of some future event in life, is to a Taoist absurd. Because nothing is useful at all. The universe is viewed as purposeless and useless through and through, because it's a game. More than that, game doesn't really convey the sense of this. When a Taoist sage is wandering through the forest, he isn't going anywhere. He's just wandering. When he watches the clouds, he loves them because they have no special destination. He watches birds moving around. He watches the waves lapping on the shore. And just because all this is not busy in the way that human beings are busy, because it serves no end other than being what it is now, it is for that reason that he admires it, and it is for that reason that you get the peculiar styles of Chinese painting in the Tang, Song, and later dynasties, where nature, in its wayward, wandering nature, is the main subject.
to understand non-verbal reality, non-conceived reality, what I call suchness, tathata. It's really very easy. It's too easy. That's why it's difficult. But that when you are fully aware and not thinking, you will notice some amazing absences. There is no past. Can you hear anything past, incidentally? Can you hear anything future? They're just not there. And the Christian word for sinning in Greek is amatanin, which means to miss the point. And the point is eternal life, which is here and now. Come to your senses.
The meaning of Wu Zi, when you call the Tao is Wu Zi, or lawless, it means there is no method in it that you can master and do it. What you have, it's all based on understanding, or what our psychologists call insight, that you have to find out that there is nothing that you do as a source and cause of action separate from everything else. When you know that there is no separate acting you, then there is no need to try to relax. Similarly, there's a passage which says, when a drunk man falls out of a cart, though he may suffer, he does not die. Because his spirit is in a condition of security, he does not suffer from contact with objective existences. If such security may be got from wine, how much more from being in accord with the spontaneous rhythm of the universe? Now you can exaggerate this, and Zhuangzi does in a very humorous way, by describing the ideal useless man. He's a hunchback, and he's so deformed that his chin rests on his navel, and so on. But he says, now this man is very admirable. He's found the secret of life, because when the social service workers come around, he's the first to get a free handout. And when the military officers come around to conscript people for the army, he's the first to be rejected. Therefore, he lives long.
also describes a case of some travelers came across an enormous tree. Fantastic thing. And they said, never did anyone see such a tree. So they went up and looked at it, and first they tested the leaves and found that they were rough and disagreeable and no good to eat. Then they looked at the branches and found that they were all twisted and absolutely no good for using as sticks. Then they examined the wood and found it was full of pith and absolutely useless for a carpenter. So nobody had disturbed this tree. It was not used for cutting down or any purpose whatsoever. And so it grew to an enormous size and was of great age. So there is about, you see, the character of the Taoist sage as depicted by Zhuangzi, something of the fool. Because the fool is the person who doesn't know enough to come in out of the rain, who doesn't compete. Everybody else gets before him to the prizes, the material prizes of life, and even to the spiritual prizes. The fool is, you see, the person who isn't going anywhere. He sits by the road and goes... like a Mongolian idiot child who isn't interested in survival, who will take a plate of food and run his finger around in it and make a wonderful slosh with the stew, and then watch it drip from the tip of his finger. He won't eat for quite a while, and then he'll play with it in all sorts of ways. Then his attention will be distracted by something else, and he'll chase after that, you see. But so long as you don't cross him, this is the case of the Mongolian idiot, he remains the most wonderfully friendly, swinging kind of a cat, and but he has no ambition. He doesn't fight for himself, and nobody can ever get him to. So the fool has always been used as a kind of analog of the sage. There's a Hindu verse which says, sometimes naked, sometimes mad, now as a scholar, now as a fool, thus they appear on earth, the free men. But this explanation of the man who is stupid in countenance and appearance and is wandering about as if he had lost his way and doesn't know anything, of course, is based on the text in Lao Tzu where he says, the people of the world are merrymaking as if partaking of the sacrificial feasts, as if mounting the terrace in spring. I alone am mild, like one unemployed, like a newborn babe that cannot yet smile, unattached like one without a home. The people of the world have enough and to spare, but I am like one left out. My heart must be that of a fool, being muddled, nebulous. The vulgar are knowing, luminous. I alone am dull, confused. The vulgar are clever, self-assured. I alone depressed. Patient as the sea, adrift, seemingly aimless. The people of the world all have a purpose. I alone appear stubborn and uncouth. I alone differ from the other people and value drawing sustenance from the mother. Then also he describes the behavior of the high form of man. And he says, the man of character, that is, in this case, the word de we were discussing yesterday, the man of character lives at home without exercising his mind and performs actions without worry. The notions of right and wrong and the praise and blame of others do not disturb him. When within the four seas all people can enjoy themselves, that is happiness for him. When all people are well provided, that is peace for him. Sorrowful in countenance, he looks like a baby who has lost its mother. Appearing stupid, he goes about like one who has lost his way. He has plenty of money to spend and does not know where it comes from. He drinks and eats just enough and does not know where the food comes from. This is the demeanor of the man of character. Then by contrast, the hypocrites are those people who regard as good whatever the world acclaims as good, and regard as right whatever the world acclaims as right. When you tell them that they are men of Tao, then their countenances change with satisfaction. When you call them hypocrites, then they look displeased. All their lives they call themselves men of Tao, and all their lives they remain hypocrites. They know how to give a good speech and tell appropriate anecdotes in order to attract the crowd. But from the very beginning to the very end, they do not know what it's all about. They put on the proper garb and dress in the proper colors and put on a decorous appearance in order to make themselves popular, but refuse to admit that they're hypocrites. is a passage in which Shun asked Zheng, saying, "Can one get the Tao so as to have it for one's own?" And the sage answers, "Your body is not your own. It is the delegated image of Chun." And, missionaries translate God, because they've read in the Bible, man is made in the image of God. Your life is not your own. It is the delegated adaptability of heaven. Your offspring are not your own. They are the delegated seeds of heaven. You move, you know not how. You are at rest, you know not why. These are the operations of the ways of Tao. So how could you get Tao so as to have it for your own? So, the whole principle then is one of of success in life through not pushing it around, through not trying to govern it. He tells a story, as a matter of fact, Chuang-Tzu has a very funny trick. A lot of his wisdom he puts into the mouth of Confucius. It's said one day Confucius was standing by a river where there was a tremendous cataract plunging down. And he suddenly saw an old man coming out of the forest who fell into the river and suddenly disappeared into the cataract. And he said, "Oh dear, too bad. Probably some old fellow tired of life who wanted to put an end to it all." The next moment, way downstream, the old man gets out of the water and starts bouncing along. And Confucius is amazed, and he sends one of his disciples to catch this fellow before he disappears. He said, "Sir, I was thinking that you were going to commit suicide, and I suddenly find that you came out of that cataract alive. Do you have some special method by which you do this?" "No, I have no special method," said the old man. "I just go in with the whirl and come out with the swell. Because I don't resist the water, I entirely identify myself with water." So you see, here he is, utterly relaxed, just rolling around in the torrent and not resisting in any way. And so he is preserved. He goes with the stream, rolls with the punch, or whatever you want to call it. So in the same way, where does the circle start? The circle of life, the cycle of life, the interdependence of the bees and the flowers, the interdependence of long and short, you see, it's all circular. And so there is nowhere and there is everywhere that it can begin. In the same way, when he discusses the organs of the body, he makes a catalogue of all these organs and says, now which do you prefer? He says, which one comes first and which one follows? Which one rules and which ones are servants? He said, it seems that there may be a governor in all this, but nobody could ever find it. So the body, in other words, does not have in it a ruling organ. Its order is the consequence of, or the operation of, every part of it existing together simultaneously, arising mutually. There's no governor. Now, the difficulty, you see, in Zhuangzi's philosophy, the difficulty with human beings is they begin to think in terms of governing and ruling. And they set out to dominate themselves and their surroundings. And invariably this leads to a mess. Now, the present moment, it does, doesn't it? It has a sense of flow. Time is going along, life is going along. Time, actually, the clock time, is simply a measure of flow, a way of going tick, 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 and counting the ticks. Say, well, we've lived through so many ticks. But nevertheless, the real time, as distinct from this ticking thing, is a flowing. And yet it's still. Isn't that fascinating? It moves, but you're always there. It's always now. You never get out of now. All right, now if you can feel that, see, that you can't get out of now, and you never will. See? Now, realize that what we call now is the same thing as Tao. The Tao, the course of things, the eternal now, the presence of God, anything you want to call it. See? That's now, and you can't get out of it. So there's no need to get with it, because you can't get out. See? That's beautiful. You just relax, and you're there. that's the principle of flowing. You can make all kinds of very clever ways of postponing finding this out. It's terribly simple. But you can say, well, this is a very spiritual matter, and I'm an unevolved person, and it'll take me a great deal of time to realize this in a more than an intellectual way. That's an excuse for playing your own game and not finding this out. There are all sorts of elaborate ways of doing that, and you can put it off by indulging in the most complicated systems of spiritual culture and yoga and so on and so forth. And that's all right. I have no objection to your putting it off if that's what you want to do. But actually, it's always here and now. Just as you can't get away from now, you can't get out of the Tao. That's the humor of the whole thing. That's why Zhuangzi has this beautiful light touch. He says, the heron is white without a daily bath. The crow is black without being painted in ink. And this is the same saying, you know, as in Zen. In the spring landscape, there is nothing superior, nothing inferior. Flowering branches grow naturally. Some short, some long. Or they say a long thing is the long body of Buddha. A short thing is the short body of Buddha. There are, therefore, you see, blondes and brunettes. Fat people and skinny people, tall people and short people, cultured people and vulgar people. Even the Christian hymn says, the rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate. God made them high and lowly and ordered their estate. No? We don't sing that now because we've got too much social conscience. Does then the distinction between this and that really exist or not? When this, the subjective, and that, the objective, are both without their correlates, that is the very axis of Tao. And when that axis passes through the center at which all infinities converge, affirmations and denials alike blend into the infinite one. See, the axis of the opposites is the perception of their polarity. The difference between them is explicit, but the unity of them is implicit. the difference, the explicit difference between two ends of a stick, but the implicit unity that they are ends of the same stick, you see? So that's the axis. The axis of Tao is the, you might call it the secret conspiracy, that it lies between all poles and all opposites, which is implicit that they're fundamentally one. So that unity, whether it's between you and the universe, or whatever polarity you want to take, is not something that has to be brought into being. If one brings it into being, one assumes that it doesn't exist. That's called in Zen putting legs on a snake, or a beard on a eunuch. There's something unnecessary, you see. So it exists, it is always there, and you can see it so vividly. True Wu Wei, or letting go, non-interference, it doesn't mean, for example, flabbiness. A lot of people, when they think they're relaxing, merely become flabby. And if that is so, you know, the perfectly relaxed person would slowly become jello and would spread out on the floor and finally drip through into the basement. Relaxation, you see, is simply something that happens when there's too much yang in you, too much of the positive. You need to balance off with the yin. And the trouble is that human beings, in their anxiety to control things, exhibit too much yang, too much aggressiveness, too much of the male principle. They need the balance of the female. And so all these exaggerations in the direction of let things go, let things happen, don't interfere, are stressing the yin point of view to compensate for the excess of yang. And furthermore, the difficulty always comes. I remember reading a book called You Must Relax. The difficulty always arises when one feels I must relax, I've got to let go, and let things happen. But how on earth do I do it? Even in trying to relax, I'm all tense because I'm anxious that it must happen. And maybe it won't, and how do you do it, you see? You can't achieve Wu Wei like that. What you have to understand is that you don't have to do anything. There is no method, as the old man said.
In other words, the reason, wouldn't it be great to be a mystic? Look at it this way. I mean, crazy. To have no fear, no attachments, no hang-ups. To be as free as the air. So that, you could just wander out in the streets and give away all your clothes to the beggars and let go of the whole thing, let it all hang out. Wouldn't it be crazy to have that courage? You look into yourself honestly, and you find that inside you're actually a quaking mess of sensitivity. So that this desire to be the great mystic is nothing more than a symptom of your quaking mess. It's self-defense. So you think, wow, we'll do that yoga bit and we'll get real tough. But that only means you're going to be increasingly insensitive. Running away from the quaking mess. Escaping. You never can. You're stuck with it. There's nothing you can actually do to transform your own nature into unattached selflessness, because you have a selfish reason for wanting to do it. Well, that's pretty depressing, isn't it? You mean to tell me that the only people who get really enlightened and liberated are those whom the grace of God somehow hits in an arbitrary way, and all you can do is sit around and wait? Well, let's begin with that supposition. Let's suppose there's nothing we can do to change ourselves. Psychotherapy, religion, all this is absolutely in vain. There's nothing you can do about it. It's like trying, as I said, to bite your own teeth or lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. Incidentally, it struck me as funny, a lot of people are using that phrase in the wrong way. They say when something very difficult has to be done, we have to lift ourselves up by our own bootstraps. You can't! It's impossible. That's terribly depressing. You mean Alan Watts, you'll come here simply to tell us that there's nothing we can do? I mean, here we are all presumably assembled in a cultural milieu, spiritual milieu, psychotherapeutic milieu, where we are supposed to get better. And I tell you, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, I say, give us our money back. Go to somebody else who'll be more encouraging. But what does it mean that you can't do anything about it? It's singing loud and clear. The reason you can't do anything about it is that you don't exist. That is, as an ego, as a soul, a separate will, just isn't there. Well, when you understand that, you're liberated. They say in Zen, you cannot take hold of it, nor can you get rid of it. In not being able to get it, you get it. When you are silent, it speaks. When you speak, it is silent. Now, don't misunderstand me. This is not any kind of fatalism. When I say you as you conceive yourself to be, that is your ego, your image of yourself, isn't there. It doesn't exist. It's an abstraction. It's like 3. Did you ever see 3? It's plain, ordinary 3? No, nobody ever saw it. It's a concept. It's a vikalpa. So in the same way as oneself. There's the happening, the suchness. Yes, sure, you bet. But it's not pushing you around because there's no you to be pushed around. In other words, there's no billiard ball on the end of the cue. There's the cue. You know, it goes this way and goes that way. They call a Buddha a Tathagata, one who comes or goes thus. This illusion of the persecuted ego who is pushed around by fate has altogether disappeared. And so, likewise, the illusion of the ego who pushes fate around has also disappeared. There's a happening. So in this, do you see what has happened? By dying to yourself, by having become completely incompetent, and found that you don't exist, you're reborn. You become everything.